Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. It turns out that 50% of my viewers still haven't subscribed to my channel yet. Come on, guys. I work so hard for you, tirelessly, days and nights, to produce good quality Go content. This is a video of me yesterday night working until 1 a.m. Nah, just kidding. No, that's not me. But this is actually me yesterday night at 1 a.m. Today's game is once again between Li and Lee Sedol, these two absolute legends. They have created so many awesome games for us, but this one will always stand out. This game happened in 2012 in the Samsung Cup where Li was playing as black. He opens up with the favorite Joseki at the time for him, especially with the symbolic move of extending back a little bit more than the balance point. Of course, today we know that with the AI, this move is not going to be super good because white can immediately attach where black plays out this Joseki, and when white press on top will create some over concentration, but of course the two players did not know that because AlphaGo didn't even come out at the time. In the actual game, white plays the splitting move, very ancient, very traditional. Black pincers, white plays a 2-space extension, and black plays the small knight, very strong move. It's the book move at the time, and both players know this Joseki very well. Lee slides in, Lee Sedol slides in, Lee pushes on top, white pushes, black blocks, and white turns here. Today, the AI, of course, at the time, this was all textbook stuff, but today, AI has, under the AI theory, today's move would be for white to extend back without crawling because this exchange actually strengthens black's cutting point. So at the time, what people were worrying about was for black to just block over here. But apparently, AI showed us that this variation would not work well for black because white can cut. After black Ataris, white extends. Black jumps down, white blocks. This is a sente. When black connects, white jumps out. After a series of exchanges, it is true that white is going to die inside, but that's not a problem at all because white can exchange the territory for the influence outside. Now white gets a Panuki in Sente and then kick black over here. So black is going to fight a very difficult fight over here, while black has a lot of over concentration in the corner. White's group over here is perfectly fine. This is an inferior position for black to go into actually. But once again, this happened in 2012. It is not possible for both players to realize that. In the actual game, Lee Sedol turned. Black Hanes, white Ataris. Black cannot keep running the stone because white can just block and there's no way for black to survive. And therefore, black Ataris from the outside. White captures. Black plays the vital move. White completes the shape, black blocks, and now this is pretty much over locally. This is a Joseki where black gained the outside influence and white gained a very nice corner. Next up, white takes up the very influential point from the top. Black now jumps out to build on the bottom. Lee Sedol plays a very patient move, that is to just secure some of the influence on top, not worrying directly about coming in immediately. And there's no good way for black to enclose the Moyo in one move either. But the next move, it was very human. So this move is actually, this can't be an AI suggestion, actually. You might be like, oh, this looks like an AI move, but actually this is a very human move because that's a very clear idea of pressing white and then expanding on top. So even if it looks kind of fancy, it is actually Lee's invention. White plays the 2-space extension. Black attaches down. White wedges. These two start fighting. And what a surprise, right? They love to fight. Black cuts. White extends. Atari blocks. White Ataris. Black connects. And this is interesting because black cannot ladder the stone over here. Therefore, Guli Ataris, Lee Sedol obviously will drag the stone out. He loves fighting. And now Guli connects because the ladder doesn't work. Now white extends out, threatening the 3 stones on top. Black pushes, white extends, black pushes once more. White always has to extend because the Hane is too serious. And at this point, black jumps out. So this is probably the first slight inaccuracy that Guli has played in this game. A more accurate move is for black to simply secure the corner and get rid of the Aji of the stone. There's not a severe follow-up for white going forward. If white plays the solid Kusumi, black can jump out like this and it's still a very fair fight. In case white plays the small knight, this is of course more pressing towards black. The problem with this move is white also has weaknesses. Black can play this very ugly looking shape, but it's actually a really good move. Just cut white off. White Ataris, black extends, white connects, and black turns. And we can see how difficult it is for white to struggle here. So that variation won't even work well for white. So the accurate move is for black to turn on top. In the actual game, let's see why jumping out looks very good, why it's an inaccuracy. Well, the reason is the next move, Lee Sedol directly comes in at the very vital point. This is what Lee Sedol is very good at. When you have a weakness, he knows exactly how to exploit that weakness to cause you maximum pain. And that's why he's a champion for many, many years. Against this move, black is kind of in trouble because there's a weakness which white's can attach over here, and then there is of course this weakness, like white's threatening to extend over here and just kill the 4 black stones. Black plays the Kosumi, white pushes, black extends, white pushes again, and black extends once again. Lee Sedol now blocks on the second line. This is extremely aggressive. This is looking at all kinds of weaknesses in the corner, but also putting a lot of pressure on black stone over here. Next up, we have Guli jumping out. Of course, you can't let Lee Sedol capture the stone over here. That would be a huge amount of territory. Lee squeezes black. So here you can see Lee's style is very aggressive. He's very sensitive to weaknesses. So whenever he sees a weakness, he won't let it go. For amateur level player, you might just thinking about, well, how do I connect myself first? But Lee, he always asks you a question. How do you connect yourself? He squeezes over here. Black has to extend. Okay, so if you don't extend, rather if you play some other moves, there's an Atari over here. And let's say even if white doesn't even Atari over here, this Kosumi is already tough enough to deal with. Therefore, black has to extend. And that's just the weakness black has. White now, instead of connecting, once again, Lee goes for the offensive. Looking at the weakness over here. And this is a very exciting corner. There's a lot of reading behind it. Black attaches, that's the shape move. And now white attaches on the second line. Of course, black won't allow this to go through. And for my audience, this is a little bit of a basic. So whenever you have a shape like this, white is not able to connect, right? So if you try to cross cut, black can just Atari on top first. When white connects, black can Atari like this. So in this way, white is not able to connect through. However, if white has a stone on the first line, then this would work. Okay, so you can now extend. Black cannot Atari. If you Atari from here, white can connect over. So why am I presenting this? Well, this explains why in the actual game, Lee Sedol plays the wedge over here. Now, in this case, if black Ataris, so I think most of us would just Atari here without any reading. But of course, that's not Guli. He's also a world champion. He reads 20 moves ahead. If you play like this, that's falling into a trap because white now can extend. Black has one choice, that is to capture white. But then there's a Tsuji in the corner. So this is looking at a double Atari here. Black has to connect. And at this point, white can extend. Now, we already know what this extension means for the variation over here. However, black cannot respond locally here anymore, right? If you try to fix, white's going to Atari, black takes, white Ataris, and black is dead. So, of course, that would be game over, and that would not be what Guli would be playing at his level. But at this point, it's still tough for black. If black captures, then we can peep first. It's actually better than directly cross-cutting. The cross-cutting, of course, works, but this is even better. Now, as we can see, black stone is dead, okay, because this Atari and extend doesn't work thanks to the first line stone. White is all connected. Now, black is kind of running for his life. There's still some liberty issues that black has over here. This is a very big leading game for white moving forward, and white probably will win this game with this amount of leading. So the corner variation is quite complicated. In the actual game, of course, Guli read it out, and then he decides to connect directly, not falling into a trap. Lee Sedol follows up by connecting through the first line. Very aggressive. Now, instead of playing anything in the corner, Guli immediately cuts off white, right? So white already gained a lot of profits in the corner. It's time for Guli to gain some compensation by cutting off the 3 stones here. Lee Sedol decides to go for a counter attack. So they just cut each other's. And that's just a very fierce fight. Now you can see it's really a matter of life and death. White cuts black off. Black needs to respond, but look at white. White's also in trouble. But when you look at black, it's also a very weak wall outside. So it's very exciting. Okay, so black has to fix the 2 stones problem, of course. That's very serious. And now Lee Sedol plays the first very big Tsuji of the game. Of course, Guli has no choice but to Atari from the outside. Atari inside is so obviously not working. So locally, black is holding, right? If you don't know any Tsuji and then you just play out like this, black's going to connect. When you Atari again, we'll connect. When you Atari, we can connect once again. And at this point, you realize that, whoops, I can't really capture black. So this Atari looks fantastic. But after that, high moment, you just kind of, you're in trouble, right? There's too many double Ataris. This group is just dead. And that's kind of game over for white. So for amateur level player, you probably just can't get out because your reading is not there. But definitely not for Lee Sedol. The next move, he plays out a Tsuji once again. Very nice Tsuji. And now we can see if, thanks to Tsuji, if you take, then we can Atari. Now, if black tries to connect, we Atari again, you take, Atari again. And then, all of a sudden, black has this very harmful stone over here. Now, this is game over for black. In the actual game, of course, this has to be dealt with. So when white Ataris, okay, instead of connecting, that doesn't work. Guli connects on the outside, letting white connect. So letting white connecting through isn't the end of the world for black because the entire group is still not alive. Next up, black goes back to fix the corner because if white ever gets this is an eye. And then white has this Atari over here, and it's kind of easy to make a second eye. So Guli doesn't want that. He wants white to be dead. He basically want to try to kill this dragon. Lee Sedol first off starts by putting some pressure on the black and form some eye space. Guli now seals the entry for white. So white could have just gotten out, which would have been fine as well. But in the actual game, Lee Sedol wants to put max pressure against black's group over here. Black now seals white in. White takes. And then they start doing co-threats. So black attaches into the corner. Now, it's very intuitive for people just like, well, what's the big deal with this? Well, let's just connect, right? But the problem is when black plays the Hane, what white was able to gain was just living the dragon, right? So these stones are not super important. You can capture them whenever you want, but it won't give you a very impressive return. Problem is, white used to have a very big influence in this area as well as here, but thanks to 2 stones over here, it's all destroyed right now. So after properly judging the board and evaluate, having these 2 stones for black is actually not going to compensate for white's living here. That's why in the actual game you see Lee Sedol is not happy with, with letting black getting 2 stones over here. Therefore, they fight it out. Black takes, white Ataris, that's a very natural co-threat. White takes back, black cross-cut for the same reason. White just keep responding in the corner. Black takes back, white connects, black Ataris, white takes back, and now black extends into the corner. Since you have responded me the first time and second time, of course, it'll keep responding locally. Black takes back, white connects. Black now goes back and fix the co-threat here. So there's a lot of co-threats in the upper top corner. Not upper top, upper right corner. Black Hanes, white Hanes, and then black takes back. And then as we can see, Lee Sedol is just using all the co-threats on top. Pretty annoying for Guli. There's so many co-threats. Atari takes back, and now there's a final co-threat going on. Black captures, white takes back, and now Guli makes a double co. So now Lee Sedol has a choice to make. If you just take back and forth, then that's just a waste of time because it's a double co. So in the actual game, Lee Sedol takes. When Guli takes, and this is where Lee Sedol showed a lot of greed. He takes the corner. So after all the exchanges that Guli made in here, the loss of the corner is absolutely insane, right? It used to be an empty corner, and now it becomes like this. So this is a huge loss for black, like 20 points easily lost in these exchanges. But what Guli was able to gain was to keep capturing. And now white needs to figure out how to live. White now plays the Kosumi, black Hanes. White now makes a fake eye. So if you wonder why can't I just play like this? Well, there's a problem over here. So white can attach. If you play here, then I can Atari out. And all right, so if you take this ko, then I can maybe look for co-threats outside. I can maybe sacrifice this group, or I can even just fight the ko here, right? So there's a lot of weaknesses for black on the outside. Actually, white can actually just Atari first and then play the tiger's mouth. That would be probably more safe. But point is, black is very weak over here. That's why he doesn't Atari, right? So he has to fix the weaknesses first. Therefore, in the actual game, he connects, which makes this area a lot safer. And now white takes back. Guli connects. White plays this move to create an eye over here. The next move, if white is able to extend or Hani, this will be alive. So Guli obviously doesn't allow that because he already lost so many points in here. Now Lee Sedol is running for his life. And of course, Guli cannot just let white live because white took too much cash on the outside. Guli blocks. It looks kind of dangerous for white actually, but Lee Sedol is not in a panic. He decides to counterattack looking at the weaknesses that black has over here. Black fixed the weakness with the Kosumi. White now Hanes. Now Guli Hanes on the bottom. The reason Guli doesn't cut immediately is because there's a lot of weaknesses. So white extends. This is looking at the extension over here. So Guli has to prevent that. But then white can Atari on the outside. And now there's a push and cut coming. When black jumps out, this would fix the weaknesses that black has over here. But the problem is white can get the extension in Sente. After the Sente, now there's a very nice Tsuchi. It's the small knight. So Guli obviously read out a lot of variations in here. And then he realized that no matter which variation he chooses, he's going to probably lose the Liberty fight. And therefore, he does not go for it. And actually, he's correct. If white actually is able to get into this position, this is extremely dangerous for black. A lot of reading for both players for sure. And that's why Guli plays the Hane on the second line. Now, Lee Sedol makes a ko here. Black has to connect. There's no point in really taking the ko because white will take back very soon. White now squeeze. And now Guli plays the wedge. The reason you cannot block just like that because white has an Atari. And when black connects, white can Atari on top and then push. And then the same variation is going to happen. White's going to cut. Okay, so black has no choice but to get the 4 stones out. We push, that's a Sente. And we can push even once more. That's still a Sente. Forcing black to extend. And now the situation is even worse. Used to have 2 stones, but now we have 3. And this is just still the same problem. Guli is very worried about this liberty fight. Therefore, in the actual game, when Lee plays here, you can't even respond. And that's thanks to Guli's reading. He's able to dodge these traps. I would have fallen into this trap like 10 days ago. Well, Guli wedges over here. And that's a Tsuji. White now Ataris. Black extends. And now white pushes out. Same problem. There's still a Atari and then push and cut. So Guli can pretty much never allow that variation to happen. And therefore he turns. And now, as we can see, this actually fixed the cutting problem. If you try to cut again, black can get this Atari and Sende. When you get out, I can just play the shape fixing move. And my both groups are very safe. And therefore white is dead. Of course, that can't happen. In the actual game, white connects. Black now cuts. White extends down. And now Guli makes an eye over here. And this shape looks very interesting. Next up, we have Lee Sedol pushing down, trying to break black's eye. Now, at this point, Guli decides to play the Atari on the second line. And all the moves from this point on comes with tremendous reading. And that's what both players are really good at. Now, the first thing you might be wondering is, well, can we just break the eye right now? So breaking the eye would lead to a very interesting variation. Guli, of course, will start basically capturing white over here. So it looks very simple, but actually this is very complicated inside because there's so many codes going on. If white connects to get rid of an outside code for black, so this is an outside code for black because you can see that these are mutual codes, but this is like from the outside. If white connects, black takes, white will connect here, and now black can now squeeze liberty, white takes, and now black plays another liberty squeezing move, white takes, black takes, white takes, then black takes. Okay, and now when white takes, black takes back, and then when white takes, black takes back here. So they can take, and it takes forever, and that will lead to a draw. Okay, so that's one variation. This is a triple ko. It's a very standard triple ko. This variation would lead to a draw, and seems like Lee Sedol, of course, is not happy about this variation. But let's look at some other variations. So when black squeezes liberty over here, if white is not happy about the result, what can Lee Sedol do? So if Lee Sedol tries to get himself back, black in Atari over here, when you Atari, well, because of this tightening of liberty, white can now not squeeze Atari right away. So you have to take. This is a Sente, of course. Black needs to take back. At this point, if you try to play over here, black can capture. Now you have a way to connect underneath without any sort of ko. But then when black takes back, white needs to take back. And then at this point, this is also another very complicated variation where now black can start tightening liberty. And this would still lead to a very complicated liberty fighting here. There's a 4-ko going on, and then there's like kind of like a connect and die situation over here as well. So very interesting position. And apparently Lee Sedol did not like this variation either. And therefore, in the actual game, he did not go for this variation. In the actual game, he decides to say, well, listen, instead of going into this mess right now, how about I extend my liberty for a little bit longer? Black, of course, is doing whatever it takes to not let white extend one more liberty. Well, and that's what they're fighting for, is for one more liberty. White turns, black hanes, and now white hanes. This looks like a normal hane for us, but for Lee Sedol, this is a very deep and cunning trap he set up for Guli. If Guli now plays without thinking, rather just cut here, like amateur level player, then he's going to be in all kinds of trouble. Now, Lee Sedol is going to push and then cut over here. This is an Atari. Black has to extend. There's a flip Atari waiting for him, and everything is forced from this point on. After the series of Ataris, white can now Atari on top and then extend, and now black is going to be dead. And therefore, Guli did not fall for this trap. He was very sober once again. At this point, he decided to go for another path. He sees another path. The path is to kill white over here instead. Therefore, in the actual game, he connects over here, squeezing white's liberty and completely fixing the weakness. Lee Sedol now Atari's completely getting the group out. There's an attach on the first line and there's a way out over here. So this group is completely safe. Guli now completely focusing on capturing whites over here. This is absolutely a mess. Like, what the hell is going on in here? There's so many codes around here. Sometimes a fake eye is just a fake eye, but when you have too many fake eyes, it becomes a real eye. So is it eye kills no eye, or no eye kills eye to eye, or not to eye to eye to eye? At this point, Lee Sedol obviously break the real eye, and it looks really hopeless for black, but at this point he can just take, and there's so many fake eyes. Oh my god, this is crazy. Now white takes and then black takes, white takes back and black takes back, and at this point, after many exchanges in here, the game ended in a draw. So the reason the game ended in a draw, because this is a very weird quadruple ko that is just very rare to see in professional games. So when black takes over here, the problem is, even if white has an eye over here, white cannot connect immediately. So if white connects immediately, then it will lead to a capture, because white doesn't have liberties. If white connects over here, black can just keep squeezing, and this exchange doesn't do anything for white. Therefore, that exchange is completely useless. So at this point, if white wants to capture black, he'll have two choices. One is to take over here, but this doesn't do anything because black can take the other ko back. And therefore, the other option for white is to take a ko from the outside. But at this point, black can just take it from here. This is threatening to capture white. Therefore, white has to take back. And therefore, we have seen that no matter which way white tries to capture black, black is just a completely unkillable demon with all these fake eyes. And there's always a way to take back such that black doesn't die, and white always has a way to not die as well. And therefore, this thing will go to infinity, and that's a draw at this point. Guys, this game got so popular and everybody was watching this game because it was between Guli and Lee Sedol, and when the game got into a quadruple ko, the commentators of Go from all different nations were commenting with their emotion and passion. Let's take a look.
This is a quadruple ko. Triple ko is already a draw, but this is a draw plus plus. How many moves can one man read? How many codes can one game have? This is the most beautiful game I have ever seen in my life. Li and Lee Sedol, ils sont des magiciens? C'est un ko quadruple. C'est beau, c'est magnifique. Emmenez-moi au bout de la terre, emmenez-moi au pays de merveille. Il me semble que la misère serait moins pénible au soleil. Es un ko quadruple, quadruple, quadruple. Es un empate. ¡Qué partida! ¡Qué jugadores tan magníficos! ¡Amo este juego! 这盘棋实在是太精彩了。两位绝顶的高手在这样的场合下下出一盘这么精彩的4节循环的和棋，简直就是亘古未有的名局啊！Uli Lee Sedol, wir waches Go, unfassbar, ein Unentschieden, was für ein Spiel, was für unglaubliche Spieler. And as always, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you want to support my work, check my Patreon page. Link is in the description. I will see you guys in the next one.